Hello everyone, I am exhausted as I usually am when I record reviews because I don't record reviews until like 10 p.m. to around the range of like 4 a.m. and right now it's about 4 a.m. And the review tonight is probably going to be the most excited I have been to do a review. It's weird, it's not like the biggest film's coming out, it's not like I'm reviewing fucking Spider-Man No Way Home, Suicide Squad or something, but it's exciting where I've went from starting with this trilogy of Fear Street, going from that first one where I was like, it's a 6.5 out of 10 when I first saw it, and then I really thought about it, and when I watched it again, I was like, I like it a lot. It's like really fun, better than I even gave it credit for. Then I watched the second one when it premiered, or when I got an early viewing with my friends, and then I was like, oh, I'm more into this now. Like, there's something more at the peak, if you watch my previous review for Fear Street, 1978. And it's just grown on me constantly and thinking about it. Like, whenever I was going to see this, and I was like, I'm actually curious where the fuck it's going to go. I imagine there's like one or two cool twists, and then I'm like, overall, there's going to be like this huge impact of like a unique style, something fun to just take in, because like I was curious how they're going to do a 1666 style film with these same actors, because I was like, are they going to be able to perform well, or is it going to be awkward? Is it still going to be fitting to the story and not feel like out of place? And we'll talk about that in a minute. But I also just wanted to see how they wrap up the main story of our characters, because like, kind of like them. You're kind of growing to be like, yeah, I really do care for them. We have a lot of time with them, so it's neat to see where this has went. So, Fear Street 3, 1666 tells the backstory of the Sarah Fier curse, the witch's curse that we've been hearing about this whole time, and the blame is that Sarah Fier is the one cursing people and making them go fucking crazy. We go into that backstory, we learn, and the actors we've seen from movies 1 and 2 fill in the roles of all the people who live in this 1666 village about the witch's curse. All the people we've seen, like Nick Good is like Solomon Good, this farmer who's like related to the Good family, and you're like, oh, he's a nice guy, he kind of patrols the city, but then you find out like, oh, well, maybe he's in control of something. Sarah Fier is our main character, Dina. Her brother is literally her brother, Josh, will play his character. And there's so much build-up, so much parallels to the other films, where you're like, oh, we saw that in the modern day, but done differently. But yet, when you think about how it connects in the story here, like when you see all the kids with their eyeballs gouged out, and the fucking, like, their like priest, the man who believed in God, and he's also there, and you're like, holy shit, like, that connects to other things we've seen throughout the films. When you see like characters reference like Ruby Lane to Mary Lane to like the Lanes who are in this like world, it's like cool to see a connection just to these minimal characters who are throughout the films. And I was like really surprised how well they made everyone who's grown up here have like a family tree that's grown up to like tell this story. It's neat to like build upon your head, because while you watch it, it's neat to like pick up little things where you're like, I remember that, or I get what that reference is to, or like it's so unique. Because when you're doing a normal film, you can hide Easter eggs, but there's no build-up unless there's like a previous thing to it. It almost feels like this could have been like a TV show, but yet it feels more authentic to stretch it out into 3 movies, because like if I saw this as a TV show, it'd be weird to go through those timelines the way they did, and the way these movies are paced. I think it's better as movies, but it does feel like that hype when you're like, ooh, well, like when you see Stranger Things, then you're like, oh, and then you see a parallel to something that happened in Stranger Things Season 1 happened in Season 2. And there's just little moments that you're just like, that's really fucking cool. I watched the Back to the Future movies recently, and that trilogy, like, there's little things that are connected and sprinkled in each film that is, like, similar, and I'm like, that's really cool. And it's exactly the vibe I got from the Fear Street trilogy, and especially from Part 3. Eventually, we get past the 1666 stuff, we find out, in spoilers, because I've been spoiling all of them anyway. Don't watch this review unless you've seen it. But spoilers, we find out the Goods are the real people who started the curse, this like trend of it. And Sarah Fier was hanged wrong, as we assume, like in usual witch stories. It's like they hang this person who's said to be a witch, and then they turn out not to be a witch, and it's like really always fucked up. It's that type of backstory. But this person literally was hanged for doing nothing. Sarah Fier, just out of the sacrifice for the person that she loved. And this is getting a huge LGBTQ following, which 100% makes sense with the story of what happens. And believe it or not, I find that to be one of the things that I was like, is this going to feel like awkward throughout all 3? Because it's weird to go from like the 90s and have that relationship, and now be like, oh, but it's the same relationship here in the '60s, but they're comparing it to like witch trials and that like these lesbian characters that we meet to the time then was like Hannah and Sarah to Samantha and Dina, like in comparison to like a witch trial scenario where it's like, is this going to come off as goofy? And at moments it kind of did. I will say that me and my friends thought it did at times, but other times I felt it was like very authentic and emotional, and it worked with what the story's been going for. We eventually, after we explain that Nick Good's bad and like his family tree has basically just grown to been fucking up everything, making Sunnyvale the happy place, Shady Side the shitty place, and patrolling everything just to have power and getting people murdered constantly. That's just been a thing that's been running in the Good family. It's almost as if this witch's curse is there a family heirloom or something. That's a neat concept. And then we get back into the 90s, and with something I didn't expect, the logo popped up, Fear Street 1994 Part 2. Almost as if we got Fear Street 1994, Fear Street 1978, Fear Street 1666, and now Fear Street 1994 Part 2. Almost as if there's 4 movies, but the last, like, only 40 minutes was Fear Street 1994 Part 2. The first hour and, like, a little bit, was, like, 1666. So most of it is 1666, if you're curious. And god damn it, is it fun. I want to talk about the 1994 section a bit more. Like, that's certainly the section I personally more so want to focus on, because that is where the story fully comes together. It feels slightly rushed, I would say, is my main, like qualm or like problem with it. It feels like my main issue with this specific part was the pacing of it. And it's not necessarily that, like, pacing very fast, like very fast pace can ruin something, but it does make things feel overlooked. Like, as soon as we cut back to 1994, Dina had that vision and saw the whole Sarah Fier story and got explained who the goods were, like Nick Good and how he's evil. Good is evil. I think that's a clever little pun. Cheesy, but fun and fitting for like a 90s, because it's supposed to be in the 90s at that point. I thought that was a clever little thing, but as soon as she gets out of that vision, fucking Nick Good's there, and she's like, oh, Nick Good's evil, and then they fucking run off. She gets her brother, they steal the police car, she explains everything in that story within like 30 seconds to him. They immediately go back to Ziggy, and they explain the plot to her without actually saying it, and then we're quickly thrown into everything. And while it's fun to see these characters come together, and we finally get use of the janitor from the first film, who has the best line still in that film, which is, Nick Good to Nick motherfucking evil. Nick Good, more like Nick motherfucking evil. That's such a good line. And I'm definitely going to be quoting that forever, I feel like, because it's just so fucking stupid, but it's so good. All these characters are fun and likable. It's cool in 1666 to see Simon and Kate and all them again as like miniature characters throughout the village who aren't very important, but they're like certainly there, and it's cool to see. I will say Sadie Sink from Stranger Things, if you're wanting her because you like her part in part 2, she's like probably like the second main character, you could argue, of that one. Don't be expecting that here. She is in it for maybe like 10 seconds. And it is very minimal, but it was cool to see still. And just get that flashback, because the 1666 stuff is easily the darkest stuff we've delved into with the series so far. And then in 94, man, they get Nick Good and they're trying to lure him into the mall, and they're going to fucking kill him and stop the whole curse, because it needs to end with the goods for the entire curse to end, at least from what we're to believe. And it's fucking fun. It's like it's like when they have the school scene in the first one where they're going to blow up all the killers at first, and they think that that's going to be the thing to work. It's like that build up constantly. It's that level of tension and fun. It finds a balance. You have the janitor character there now, and like you're like, I want to see what he does. Like, is he going to be funny? And like, he seemed like he'd be a humorous character, and he definitely is for what he has. And it's fun to see him on screen. It's cool to see Berman or Ziggy and Gillian Anderson's character. It's cool to see her like in action finally, rather than being just the person who has a traumatized story to tell. And it's cool to see her like get past her fears pretty quickly. I thought that was the one thing where, even though she's like been afraid of it and didn't want to fight anyone, it's cool to see how her thing wrapped up quickly. I found that to be good because I usually hate that cliche where it's like going against their trauma and it's like a side character type plot. It's cool that she still gets to kick ass, do action, but it's quickly resolved. I don't feel it felt like long or forced. It's cool that Josh gets some standing moments in to like the brave one who wants to stand up for her sister. Dina is still a girl boss. Let's fucking be honest. Dina kicks ass in this one. More than I'd say in the first. I feel in the first I wasn't liking her character. I definitely like Dina at this point. Just for her minimal bit in 2 and then what she has to do here, I found her more likable. And what we overall get an arc and those parallels with her as Sarah Fier to here, I found very enjoyable. Lighting and colors neat. It's like cool to see 1666 is just bleak, plain, dark lighting. Nothing really special about it. And this one's easily the most crazy neon, bright green, splattered, blue, red lighting. It's just so neat to see all that like neon lighting near the end. It very different change, but it also like almost feels like the lighting lets you know the tone, like you're getting into like that 80s, 90s slasher, goofy, fun film vibes from those very dark vibes you got. The second one had like that yellow greenish tint to it, like when you watch any of the Friday the 13th films, like some of the earlier ones in the morning scenes or like a sleepaway camp, it has that like uglyish color, that yellow grade over it. Kind of like how the lighting in my room looks now, at least based on what I'm seeing. Kind of has like that colored tint to it, and you're always like, oh, it lets you know it's a little bit darker, but when it's like that neon light color, that bluish, greenish, red neon light color, something like like this on my computer, that lighting color, you know, that shit's just, you know, like perfect. Like that's exactly the type of lighting that when you know that comes on, you're like, oh, this is the fun section of the movie. This is when it gets like colorful and more creative, goofy 90s, 80s style. It's neat that they can elaborate the years differently, like just from simple things like that, as well as have parallels, have Easter eggs, constantly making you think, but simultaneously you don't just have to think, because it's very easily explained and not that confusing. But there's little things, like if you notice early on, you're like having more fun with it. Like if you catch details before they even tell you what they are, it's always like, oh shit, yeah, that's fucking cool. You always enjoy that. And I think that's what a trilogy should do. And overall, I'll rate the whole trilogy as a whole after I rate this movie. You've got my thoughts. I like the acting, I like the characters. It was a fun watch. I felt some of it was rushed. Some elements of the witch stuff came off a little cheesy, and I will admit that. Those are my biggest complaints, though, is that it just feels like a kind of rushed ending, maybe. A little bit like, not anticlimactic. We got the ending you would kind of want from this, but it does feel like, oh, like it fucking happens. Like it's a quick 40 minutes. I would have liked it maybe to be like 55 to an hour, like more time with these characters, but no. We're thrown into the scenario. We fix the situation. It almost feels like it's a full third act. It almost feels like part 2, when they say 1994 part 2, is just the third act to what part 1 should have been. And we've had this in between. I'm not going to say that's because of the timeline or the pacing or they ordered the movies wrong and they shouldn't have done that. I think it works with what they did. It just does come off very quickly in the ending. And I'm sure when I was watching with my friends, I'm going to guess they felt that way too, where it kind of just goes by really quick. And like when it ends, it's like, oh, it's over. And it's like a good, satisfying ending, but like it's quick. So overall, you got good characters. 1666 stuff was impressive. It did work, and it didn't feel unfitting for the most part. It is a little rushed. It's still fun. I would say it feels more than 2. 2 feels like just exposition of a backstory with some really fun kills and moments. And overall, I think that film works only if you've seen the first. This one could work almost on its own if you didn't need the explanation of the second. And I think that's why I'm going to say not as good as the original. I think 1994 holds up as the most strong, contained film, but I will say that this is an improvement on 1978, just barely. It's so hard to say because I think these films are like, they kind of all deserve the same rating, but some are just a little bit better than others, and I can point out some reasons why. I gave the first one now a 7.5. I give the second one a 7. I would give this also a 7.5, but with the mereness of like it should be under the first. I still like 1994 a little bit more. Maybe it was Kate and Simon. I love those characters. Maybe it was just the more consistent story, or maybe it just felt like I had so much more time with these characters to build up to the emotional moments that when this one is like only the last 40 minutes of the movie, it feels a little too quick to be thrown into the scenario we're in. Also, Nick Good, besides being like explained as like, oh, he's under the family that is the one who started the curse and all these killers going out, it was actually them. He doesn't feel like he developed that point. It feels like we got him in the first movie. You know, something's a little weird with him. He could be good, could be evil. It's like something's off with him. And then not much in the second movie to do with him at all, other than he was there at the summer camp. And then 3, it's like he's revealed evil. Here's an explanation of part 2 where you can be like, oh, here's some hints that he's evil, little notches. Only if you've seen the third movie, though, you wouldn't get that vibe from him in the second movie. You'd think he's just a good guy then. And that's kind of why I don't feel like he was modern developed. Like, I didn't get the detective him in 1994. I wanted more of like him building up to this evil character, maybe a little bit, just a little bit. Those are all personal gripes and some Rush complaints, but yeah, I would give this a 7.5 out of 10. I think it's simple to say 7.5 out of 10 would be my confirmed rating for this. Overall for the trilogy, I think then, yeah, 7.5 out of 10 would fit for the most part. It's fun. It is quick. It is unique. It's something that I could see like a bunch of teens loving and also adults loving. Or if you're like trying to get into horror, like if you can get over the fact that it's violence, like I would have loved this if I was 12. If I was 12 years old, this would have been my shit. I'd have been like, oh, you got like goofy, crazy shit going on. There's a lot of Easter eggs and twists that I can catch personally at a young age. It's got sex, it's got comedy, it's got fun, likable characters, weird ones you love to hate, ones you just hate to love. There's so much to it. It just feels like fun. If you're willing to introduce kids to horror and have a lot of violence and maybe some sexual and language elements throughout, then honestly, I wouldn't say it was bad to introduce them to it, because it would be a fun start for them to get into horror. Overall, yeah, this was a good trilogy, and I'm really glad I checked it out instantly as they were all coming out. I definitely will come back to this maybe near Halloween. I would like to watch it with my parents. I feel like my parents would like it overall as a trilogy. Maybe they would be weirded out by the fact it's just a slasher film at first, but I think once they would grow to it, I know my parents would enjoy this as well, so definitely going to come back to check it out or share it with friends and stuff. Good thing I don't do, but if anyone wants to comment, because I don't think I get... Some videos get views, some people don't check them out. Good for me, I make these videos for myself, but I would like to know, if you did see the Fear Street trilogy, what were your thoughts on it? Did you guys like the Fear Street trilogy? Do you think, based on this very ending, that like maybe they'll set up another one? Would you guys like more Fear Street novels or spin-offs or a different story of a trilogy, or like just continuing from this trilogy? If you would like to see any of that, like if you would, like, let me know. I would just like to hear some people's thoughts on it. If not, I could always just ask other people who I know for sure have seen it anyway, but I'm asking here in case anyone does want to. Man, I have so many reviews coming up, so let's talk about that for a second. Reviews coming up. Black Widow spoiler review, still gotta do it. I don't know when. I might honestly not do one, but I kind of want to get more in depth with my thoughts, because I kind of left it minimalized when I did my non-spoiler review. I will get into it at some point. I also have to review the original Space Jam, Escape Room 2, Nicolas Cage's Pig, Space Jam: A New Legacy. Still working on my review for Nobody. That's like a lot at once, so I'm trying to get a lot out as well, and then get all my reviews and thoughts out just for myself. So it's more personally when I want to do things. I will get a Black Widow spoiler review out. For sure, it'll be out before August 6th, before Suicide Squad comes out, because I'm probably going to do a spoiler review for that, because that's like the next really big movie to logically do a spoiler review on, like one that I will label as spoiler, and it will be long with spoilers, and I will go really in depth with it, not like how I'm talking about Fear Street. So yeah, a lot of reviews coming up. I'll try and get my Escape Room 2 one out after this, and then probably my Space Jam ones, and then Nicolas Cage's Pig. I'm definitely wanting to talk about that one, trust me. I'm going to get that one out probably last out of all these this weekend. So, yeah, that's it. So, check out the Fear Street trilogy, and check out other videos on this channel, other reviews. Check out the other Fear Street reviews if you haven't seen them. And that's it. Bye!
Forever.
What happens now?